There's no reason you would have heard of Amy Julia Becker or her husband Peter unless you like to read memoirs out of the religion section of the bookstore like I do. Amy Julia and her husband Peter are an average couple. They dated through high school. They dated through college. A week after graduation, they got married. I guess we're getting close to their anniversary. They loved being a couple so much with their freedom, just the two of them, that they waited for 6 years to have children. But when Amy Julia finally got pregnant, they did what so many expectant couples do. They read the childbirth books. They took a childbirth class. They decorated a nursery. They even named the baby they hadn't met yet, Penny. When Penny was born, everything went fine. But Amy Julia's mother in the delivery room noticed that when she was born, the nurses started glancing around at each other and then pretty quickly called one of the neonatal doctors. The doctor arrived and examined Penny and then invited Peter to step out into the hall. And in the hallway, the doctor told the father, Peter, that their baby Penny had Down syndrome. Now, this news came as a shock with a mixture of disbelief and fear. Many couples discover that a baby has Down syndrome early in the pregnancy. And in the increasingly rare occasions that they choose to have the child, they have months to prepare and get ready for this. But the Beckers were absolutely shocked. This came out of the blue. And Amy Julia's memoir, called A Good and Perfect Gift, is the story of young Penny's first 2 years of life. And especially it's her own story of the roller coaster ride of emotions that she was on, of grief and disbelief and fear, and learning to deal with that. One of her fears was this. Amy Julia had grown up very accustomed to achievement. She was a high-achieving young woman, especially academically. And she worried that as a mother, she might not be able to relate to her daughter, who would probably not love books as much as she had loved books, who would probably not be able to add without counting on her fingers. She wondered, could I learn to live with a child who does not achieve in the way I have always understood achievement? Deeper still, though, deeper than the fears around achievement, was this fear. Would Penny be loved? Would her family be able to love her and accept her? And as a mother, would she herself be able to love fully this daughter, Penny? The deepest fear. This mother, as she cradles the child, only a month or 2 months old, wondering this question. It's the question that gives the story such charge and emotional energy throughout, wondering, if I had gotten to choose, would I have chosen this child? This story of Amy Julia's learning to love and embrace Penny as she is and not wishing her to be someone else. It highlights two things in our culture about what we believe about being chosen. The first is this. When we think of being chosen, we think it means we're chosen because we have achieved something. We've been chosen because we've proven we have something to offer. Think about all those who are graduating this weekend. They're graduating in the midst of an economy that's not producing as many jobs as many people would like. And these young graduates have to go out and find employment. And the few of them who find a job, especially a job remotely related to their major, and don't have to end up moving back home with mom and dad, feel like they have received this great affirmation. You have been chosen. They've looked at my transcripts and my grades and my extracurricular activities and my leadership experience, and they say, you have achieved, we want you. and the story of Amy Julia and her fear about Penny's achievement reminds us how, in our culture, we almost always choose people based on their record of accomplishment, on their achievements. And life is like one very long audition. The second thing their story does is it raises for us the specter of not being chosen. It calls our attention to the pain that many people feel more than you would imagine, of living a life believing they have never been picked. The thing I hated the most about elementary school and middle school and high school was gym class. Because some of you have the same experience. Because of the inevitable lining up against that brick wall outside, while two captains of opposing kickball teams pick alternately the people they want on their teams. All the while I stood there knowing I would, like last week, be the last one to be chosen on the team. And then I would see it, the fallen expression on the face of that captain, the slumped shoulders as he realizes, I've got to pick Roger. Well, to have an experience like that growing up is bad. But for that to become a metaphor for the way you see your life, that is a tragedy. The tragedy of lives that are unchosen. And Amy Julia's story of her and Penny, and her fear that Penny might not be chosen, her fear that she herself as the mother might not have chosen this child, highlights for us the wounds of those in our lives, in our church, in our neighborhoods who are walking wounded, feeling like they have never been chosen. For most of us, being chosen means we have achieved, arrived. And being unchosen is a tragedy. On the night before his crucifixion, the night Jesus washed his disciples' feet, the night he shared with them this meal that we're about to share with one another, Jesus taught them a lot. And one of the things he says seems to me like a postcard that he has sent down through the centuries, addressed to those trying to follow him in the culture of North America. A postcard he has sent to us as a challenge to our assumptions about achievement and choice in order to set the record straight. Jesus said to them and to us, "You did not choose me, but I chose you. And I appointed you to go and bear fruit that will last. You did not choose me, but I chose you." And I imagine our first reaction is, what? What could he mean by possibly saying that we didn't choose him, but he chose us? Has Jesus suddenly become a Calvinist? Cue scary music, dun dun. Is he talking about predestination? Choosing some and not choosing others? Messing with our free will? And so our response when our hackles rise is to reaffirm the priority of our choice and our own will and say, how dare he say we did not choose him? How dare he choose us instead? But let's think of it differently. Let's not think of Jesus choosing among us, some rather than others, you, not you. But let's think of this as the fundamental reality of all of our lives. The great good news that is a challenge to the tragedy of the unchosen. You, whoever you are chosen. Jesus' very life and ministry, that is God's choice for you. Your own life is a sign of God's choice for you. You are. And you are who you are because God chose you. And unlike in our culture, if God chooses you, it doesn't mean God has to reject someone else. No, God chooses you and you and you and you and you. This chosen, the foundation on which our lives are built. It's also one of the hardest things to actually realize and allow ourselves to believe. I like to imagine our life as a kind of onion. Can you picture an onion and you cut the onion in half down the middle and you know it has that core in the middle of the onion and then all those layers around it. Well, that core of our lives is this unalterable truth. You are chosen in Jesus Christ, chosen at the core. But as we live, that truth becomes covered by layer and layer and layer we need to peel away. And those layers say, I will be chosen if. I will be chosen if. I will be chosen if. Can you imagine and think of those layers in your own life? I will be chosen if. What comes after the if might be different for each one of us. I don't know what it is for you. I will be chosen if. I will be chosen if I get good enough grades. I will be chosen if I can keep my batting average up. I will be chosen if I can stay sober. I will be chosen if I can keep this job and excel. I will be chosen if I can stay thin, if I can look young, if I can be beautiful. I will be chosen if. Now, if we're lucky, somewhere in our life we have been loved unconditionally enough that a few of those layers are already broken through, that some human being's love for us has begun to awaken us to that core truth of our lives: you are chosen. I like to think that is the reason God invented preaching. Because God knew we would need to be reminded again and again and again. This good news, the unchangeable truth of our lives. You are chosen. Definitively. Completely. It's as true for 2-year-old Penny as it is for her high-achieving mom, as it is for all the rest of us. Chosen. Chosen and for a purpose. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and I appointed you to go and bear fruit, fruit that will last. Now, we're used to thinking someone gets chosen on the basis of the fruit they have already produced. But in God's kingdom, it is just the opposite. You are chosen. You have been blessed with this life of yours, these gifts and passions and talents. We've been blessed with simply ourselves, who we are, chosen. And then God says to us, now let this life be a gift for others. God says, let your life, well, not achieve fruit. You don't really achieve fruit, do you? That's a little too active. Let your life not succeed in producing fruit. No, that's not quite the right verb there either, is it? No, let your life bear fruit. That's natural. Let your life bear fruit. When your life becomes a gift for others, there will be fruit. You can count on it. We are not chosen on the basis of the fruit we've already produced. But we bear fruit when we live as one's already chosen. A few weeks ago, many of you came to church on a Wednesday night to hear Sam Wells and Marcia Owens talk about the wonderful book they wrote, Living Without Enemies, and the one that more than 100 of us have been reading over the last several weeks. And I encouraged a number of you to come because I especially wanted you to meet Marcia. I've told stories about Marcia in sermons, and I know her myself, and she is a living vision of what it means to live a life that is fruit-bearing. And I wanted as many of us to experience that as possible. Marcia has a saying. She says, "There is no escaping my love." And you can't know how true that is until you've been in a room with her and felt the energy of her love. But it doesn't matter if you're her co-author, Sam Wells, Dean of the Duke Chapel, or it doesn't matter if you're an ex-convict who she's having breakfast with. There is no escaping her love. And when I see that, I think that is exactly the kind of fruit that God is longing for our lives to produce. For us who have experienced that there's no escaping God's love, that we are chosen, then to let that just overflow in our love and choice for others, bearing fruit. We call this meal that we're about to have a sacrament. We call it a sacrament because through this meal, God conveys God's love. God conveys God's choice for us in a way that we can see and touch and feel. And I think another way of saying that we are called to bear fruit in our lives is simply to say God is inviting us to become sacraments. That through us, God's love and choice for others is conveyed in a way that our neighbors and friends can see and touch and feel. In the first months of Penny's young life, Amy Julia heard all the things she would possibly hear. The stinging comments, the ignorant assumptions, the stereotypes we all have about people with Down syndrome, how cute and cuddly and joyful they always are. She heard just the stupid things that we say when we don't know what to say to someone whose life has changed. But she also got an email from a good friend of hers she had when she was growing up in church. And the email said this: "I can't wait to see the ministry that Penny will have." And here's what Amy Julia wrote thinking about that email. She says, "It hadn't crossed my mind that Penny would have a ministry, a way of giving to other people. Penny would give to us. She would not only be blessed, she would be a blessing." Yes, she would. Of course she would. Because she'd been chosen for that. Just like the rest of us. Amen.